Hello and welcome to Ideagen 17 Days of Sustainability. Today we have an amazing power panel, a global impact panel led by Karen Chen, the co-founder of Women in Cloud and director of worldwide partner marketing at Microsoft. Karen, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. And thank you for joining the Ideagen community and this panel to discuss the role of corporate boards to advance gender inclusion. Now, this is a UN-related event and organization, so let's just take a moment to understand what is SDG number 5. SDG number 5 is all about gender equality and women's empowerment and how we will achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. This is about protecting and educating women and girls and making space for more women in leadership roles. And in the context of our panel discussion today, we are focused on enabling more women to board leadership roles. The UN has outlined a few targets that align with this ambition, including ensuring women's full and effective participation and equal opportunities for leadership at all levels of decision-making in political, economic, and public life, and to make sure that we have the right policies, support systems, communities in place to ensure the success of women in those endeavors. And how will we know we're making progress? We'll know that because a proportion of our leadership seats in government and managerial positions have women in those roles. I'll just briefly read an excerpt from the UN Progress Report that states that as of January 1st, 2020, representation by women in single or lower houses of national parliament reached 24.9%, which is just up slightly from 22.3% in 2015. Women have better access to decision-making positions at local levels, holding 36% of the elected seats in local deliberative bodies. And this is based on data from about 133 countries and areas. But there isn't all good news here. In 2019, 28% of managerial positions in the world were occupied by women. That's just a small increase from just 25% in 2000. So in 9 years, not much progress has been made so far. And this is in light of women representing 39% of the world's workers and half of the world's working age population. So to kind of break that down, out of 100 working aged people, 39 of those people are women, and only 11 are in managerial roles. So clearly we do have more progress to be made here. And boards do make a critical impact in making sure that we are affecting this change. Boards in general help organizations understand the context in which they work and how best to prioritize resources and strategies that are based in the reality of our situation today. They help us to create awareness for systemic inequities that have affected society, and they serve as an organization that drives our business forward, that can impact local policy, that have direct impact to economic progress. At Microsoft, a company that I work for, our board has set a priority around corporate social responsibility, which moves us into global human rights, which also is inclusive of empowerment for women. And we've aligned a lot of our principles around how do we eliminate all forms of discrimination? How do we increase more influence for women in leadership roles? So clearly, I have a lot of passion for this space. I am a co-founder for Women in Cloud, and I also have a career in tech, and I absolutely love tech. And I can see firsthand how inclusive design, inclusion in our strategies can have a huge impact in how we empower people and create economic acceleration when women are included. When we put women in positions of decision-making, leadership, and business ownership, we actually start creating a bigger formula of progress and access that can help enhance more lives in all ways, and especially since we know technology is at the center of many of the transformations that we're seeing today. Certainly a big part of what inclusive economic growth and sustainability can mean for all of us long term. I mean, when 50% of the world's population is the market opportunity, that is an incredible opportunity to unleash. And we hope that through this discussion today, we can learn more about how boards and the makeup of the boards and having more women on boards can have true impact in this space. So let me introduce our panels participants for us today. I'm joined by Karen Chen, who is Advisory Board Director and Venture Partner. Karen, if you could share highlights about your experience and what got you here today.
Thank you, Karen. I'd be happy to. Let me give you a little background. Hello, my name is Karen Chen. And I've spent most of my career in the corporate world. Most recently, like Karen Fasio, I was at Microsoft. I was the general manager responsible for worldwide financial services globally. Prior to joining Microsoft, I was a board director and the CEO of Tower Group, an advisory research firm focused at the intersection of information technology and financial services. And prior to my role as CEO and board director at Tower Group, I was on the Gartner senior leadership team and served on the Gartner International Board. Way back years ago, I began my career at IBM on the teams that opened up the very first offices in what was then the Soviet Union, now I'm dating myself, now Russia, and in the People's Republic of China. So over the years, I've lived and worked in a lot of countries around the world. Now, while on the boards and on the corporate leadership teams, I was frequently the only woman, or perhaps one of two women. Fortunately, my global roles did give me the opportunity to work with people from a wide range of ethnicities and cultures. And as a result, it became very apparent to me that a lack of diversity on boards and leadership teams also meant that we had a limited variety of perspectives and experiences when making a lot of important strategic decisions. So 3 years ago, I moved from my corporate roles and I decided to do what was my passion, and that is advocate for women and for diversity overall. So currently I'm a venture partner with the Masters Fund, a gender lens venture fund focused on women founders. I'm also on the advisory board for multiple early stage growth companies focused on high tech, primarily AI and fintech. And I'm pleased to be on the advisory board of Women in Cloud, which is actually what brings me here today. I should add that I'm the proud mother, I should say the proud parent. My husband and I have 3 sons who were wonderful allies for their wives. And now we have 2 granddaughters and 2 grandsons. So that's a little bit about me, Karen, and back to you.
Thanks so much, Karen. Clearly a lot of experience for us to tap into today. And I'd also like to introduce Arno Moreau, who is Vice President of Ashoka. Arno, if you could also share some highlights on your journey to here.
Yes, very happy to be here. Hi, everyone. It's really a huge pleasure to be with you and to discuss this topic. So I'm actually based in Switzerland. I am French, as you can probably hear. Actually, I would define myself as a social entrepreneur, and as a social entrepreneur, I would say that my purpose in life is really to bring, I would say, to try to create a better world, through different dimensions. And I started my career probably 20 years ago by incepting a first organization called Sports Without Borders at that point. And one of the most probably impactful programs that we designed back in those days was in Afghanistan. After the Taliban left Afghanistan in 2003, we reintroduced sports for women in Afghanistan. And I remember that it was really not only a big achievement for the organization and for Afghanistan, but it was a kind of a personal pride that we had managed to actually contribute to bring back a bit of equality, in this country that had suffered so much. Then I moved to Ashoka, which is a global network of social entrepreneurs. Our goal is basically to identify the most promising people, innovative people, bringing up solutions to the most pressing social issues. We are lucky that out of our 4,000 social entrepreneurs and Ashoka fellows around the globe, we almost have I would say, balance between female and male social entrepreneurs. And I think it brings a lot of value to this network because we have this diverse set of opinions and approaches to tackling those issues. So I've been basically literally working a lot with a lot of female social entrepreneurs. Our leadership at Ashoka is made of also fantastic women. And actually my work nowadays is really to help companies, major companies in the world, really integrate social impact at the very core of their business, because we believe that if you really want to be serious about solving social change and creating social change at a very large scale, you need to have all players, all economic players, focusing their time and assets and energy on that. And when you try to create such a movement and a global movement, you need to have companies who are thinking differently, who are looking at the world with different lenses. And our deep, I would say, our deep belief is that such companies need to be gender balanced. You cannot really change companies if you don't have at the very top of those companies a diverse set of visions and skills. So that's why I'm really glad to be here today, because I truly believe that if we really want companies to tackle social issues at scale, we will probably need more women leaders in those companies.
Yes, absolutely. What you say has so much resonance, Arno. Thank you. And also some great perspective, I think, that we'll be able to bring to the discussion today. So let's go ahead and dive in and unlock some discussion. So when we typically think of boards, they definitely serve a governing, they are a governing body with fiduciary accountabilities. But I'd love to understand how you see the influence of corporate boards in companies that make DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion, a strategy that's core to their accountability and the company's mission. Karen, why don't we start with you on this one? Hey, Karen, can you hear me?
I can now, sorry. Just to be clear, it is the CEO and direct reports that are responsible for creating and implementing the strategy of a corporation, which would include how diversity, equity, inclusion are embedded in that strategy. However, among the board's core responsibilities are to review and approve the implementation of management's strategic plans and to monitor corporate performance and results as compared to the strategic plan, as well as compared to its value, mission, and goals. In the past, boards were primarily held accountable to its shareholders, but today boards are increasingly being held accountable to all its stakeholders, which includes employees, customers, and society overall. So within this context, boards can and should partner with management to look deeply at the corporate values and culture. So boards do have an important, impactful voice within the company and to its stakeholders. Therefore, the board can create the momentum needed in a corporation to determine whether DE&I is integrated into the corporate values, the mission, the goals, and of course its strategy. And that is the responsibility of the board, and we're seeing increasingly boards step up to it. After all, strategy is at the intersection of values, opportunities, and capabilities. So the board and management needs to work together when it comes to implementing diversity, equity, and inclusion goals and actions.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, especially if you're starting to see that as being an infused accountability in boards moving, today and going forward. So Arno, this one, I'd love to dig into a little bit more about the concept of purpose-driven strategies and how to think about inclusive impact and economic inclusion. Just kind of building off of what Karen said, with that rising focus, where do you see this coming from? Like, what is that opportunity that you think the board is trying to influence here?
Yes, I think that we are seeing that the world is changing very, very fast. And as Karen just stated, probably years back, people were just probably looking at just the financial performance of the company, were not really looking at the long-term sustainability. Nowadays, what has really changed is that, as it was said, it's no more just about the shareholders; it's really about all the stakeholders, including obviously the clients, but also increasingly taking care of the environment. And I would say the increasing pressure is coming from the talents, who are basically now asking for what's the true purpose of the company. I think that what we are currently seeing with millennials, but not only, and also with people from my age, for instance, who are increasingly asking, what the company really stands for, what's the mission of the company. And it was probably not something that people were paying attention decades ago, because they were basically looking for a job and a great position, a great title on their emails, etc. But I think that now people are first of all asking, what the company is going to do and what's the contribution to the world. So as a result, the company has to change the way it operates, the way it's organized, the way it does business. And again, if you really want to thrive in a fast-changing world, in a world which is really complex, you need to come up with a new way of organizing, a new way of thinking. And what we have seen is that, and studies are demonstrating that very, very well, is that companies who are, I would say, mission-driven, but also are organized in a different way, or a bit more horizontal, or also developing new skills such as empathy, such as collaboration, etc., are thriving better, or more resilient as well. In the recent crisis, both the financial crisis 10 years ago and the one we are just going through, we see that companies who are thinking differently are probably more likely to succeed and to make it through. So as a result, I think that I would say the common sense would probably command that boards have to open up. They have to change the way they organize. They have to move from, I would say, old boys band to a new way of accepting diversity. Studies also show that when you have women within boards, the way decisions are made, the way decisions are informed is totally different. Then boards make less risk-taking decisions. They are less aggressive as well. And I think it's quite interesting to see that, again, when you bring diversity into your company, into your board, into any governance, because we're talking about companies, but it's true also for a lot of things, governments, agencies, it's true for non-for-profit organizations as well. The moment you create this ability to have a diverse set of opinions, your chances to make the right decisions are probably much higher.
I love that perspective, because it to me, it also represents just how important it is for the board to be very in tune to the climate of the day, and in addition to their responsibility for encouraging the future, right? Like shaping the future of what we want to see for the company they govern and the constituents they impact. Karen, do you have any thoughts you'd like to add to this?
Well, I completely agree with Arno. There are many reasons why an executive leadership would focus on inclusion. For example, when the board, executive leadership employees overall reflect the profile of their customers, which include, by the way, by many women, half the population, but also other stakeholders, there's a significantly better chance that the products and services will be created that reflect the needs, interests, and desires of the buyers and investors. And we tend to think that that's a benefit to consumer-focused businesses, but it's not just consumer businesses. Let me give you an example. Marks, she is the CEO of Otis. She took over Otis in 2017 and recently led the company through a successful spin-off from United Technologies. As all the social unrest was happening, Judy decided, with the board's support, that she needed to root out social injustice and entrenched racism where it existed within Otis. So she launched a new initiative that was focused on women, but diversity overall. And she called it Our Commitment to Change. And it included things like review of hiring, compensation, business practices, unconscious bias training, and so on, to help with transparency. And what was interesting was when Judy was asked in a recent interview if as a B&B company, there's less of a business imperative for DE&I than a consumer-facing company, she replied, no. Customers make a decision every day who's going to do business, who they're going to do business with, just like stakeholders want to make decisions every day who they're going to invest in. So why wouldn't the most inclusive and engaged team why wouldn't you want, as she said, the most inclusive and engaged team showing up every day? And I think that is a big motive. That's a big opportunity for a corporation and for the boards to lead that initiative.
And it just sounds exciting. I mean, it's very motivating to know that you've got this sort of higher level impact that you can make with the command of resources that you have. A very bold and courageous and an impactful way to lead. So thank you for sharing that example. So Karen, you mentioned a couple of benefits to organizations for having a D&I priority driven from the board. I was wondering if you had anything more you wanted to expand on that, and Arno would love for you to contribute there as well.
Well, Karen, I'll kick it off by saying, that while boards, I mentioned, need to provide the oversight for positive financial results, but also responsibility to all stakeholders. There was a recent study that was quoted by Catalyst, which said that companies with business cultures and policies, inclusive business cultures and policies, report a 59% increase in creativity, innovation, and openness. And a related 3-year study showed that higher diversity men earn 38% more revenue. Well, I think we all could quote a bunch of statistics, but there are some even more subtle benefits brought forward by diversity and inclusion. I'm going to cite another example. I think you probably all heard the news reports about how countries led by women have had a disproportionately better results in fighting the pandemic. And there were a whole bunch of studies that were done to come up with the reasons for this, including, so some of the outcomes were women were better listeners, more open to surrounding themselves with a diverse set of advisors, and not too proud to take their advice and act on it quickly. Other reasons involve different ways that men and women approach risk-taking. But what was most interesting for me was that these studies showed how different situations demand different approaches and ways of thinking. Diversity reduces groupthink, and therefore it results in a greater variety of perspectives and better decision-making. Corporations can only achieve these benefits by being truly inclusive, and there are big benefits that they can see as a result. Arno, would you like to add a few things, Arno, to that?
I'm totally aligned with you. I think that what we are learning, because we have a lot of social entrepreneurs working in that field, and we have people like Riccarda Zenza in Italy, who created a very interesting organization. She decided basically to try to help women who are going on maternity leave really actually capitalize on the skills that they will have to develop during this very specific period of time, and so that they can come back not only more confident, etc. But she has developed a very interesting program that really helps those women suddenly again recognize and fully leverage the skills and the new skills that you develop. And part of those skills, there are two things that she really realized that were absolutely critical. One is empathy. It's true that when you have to take care of a baby, when you have to pay attention to that, you develop a new way of behaving. And the other thing that she identified was selflessness. And again, when you have this in a company, instead of having teams competing, you have teams collaborating. The basic and the foundation of collaboration is trust, is empathy, and is really about thinking for what's best for the group and not what is just best for you. And I think that this is really a big differentiator, and that's why I think that what you were saying on the fact that companies with a diverse culture are overperforming, I do believe that it's because women bring new ways of looking at problems. They probably also bring new solutions, new strategies to answer the issues that the companies is really encountering. And as such, you come up probably with more informed strategies and better strategies for the long run. So I think that what is really interesting is really to think of, nature is diverse by definition. So we need to replicate in a way those ecosystems in those companies. If you had in the nature only one sort of tree or flower, etc., our world would be totally different. So you need diversity. It's absolutely critical for, I would say, for the balance, not just of the companies, but for the world as well. So I think that recognizing, understanding beyond the statistics, what makes women think and behave differently is absolutely critical. And I think that what we also need to avoid is that, the way companies organize, the competition that we're seeing now, sometimes pushes women to behave as men. And I think that this is really critical that we avoid this type of behavior, and that I think that we promote and help women succeed because of their way and their own way of thinking, and not just because they adopt, the more malish way of behaving.
Love your point there, Arno and Karen. So that brings me to the next question, right? Because this is challenging, right? When you're introducing more diversity, more perspectives, there's more to manage. And so I'm curious if you could comment on, challenges that boards should anticipate, right? In the face of driving DE&I priorities. And if you have critical areas where you think boards need to be more thoughtful of, so they can successfully onboard women and champion diversity in the organizations they serve. Why don't we start with you, Arno, on this one?
Yes, it's a hard one, but I think that what I believe is critical when you try to create such big culture shifts is that first of all, they have to be genuine. It cannot be something which is just artificial and that you just do it because you were told to do it. I think that as a CEO, as an investor, as an owner of a company, if you go down that direction, you need to be absolutely convinced that this is the right thing for your company, and that you will not only position women in leadership positions, but you will also be ready to bear with the consequence of that, which is creating probably new ways of making decisions, creating new ways of collaborating within companies. So it's not just nominating women to boards. It's all about accepting and to change the culture, and also probably the way your company is organized. And I think that it's not trivial. I think that it has also to be consistent in a way that if you do that, you cannot just nominate one woman, or two in the board, and not just have a long-term strategy to help more and more women become also managers, and maybe one day on their own they will become board members. But I think it has to be an entire strategy which is sponsored probably by the top of the leadership, but you need to anticipate that you will have to apply such a strategy at all levels and all layers of the company.
Fair point. Karen, if you could add your comments here too.
Yeah, sure. I completely agree with Arno. As he said, things need to be applied at all levels. So I think one of the biggest challenges for boards actually lies in the detail. Boards provide oversight. That's their responsibility. Yet to bring diversity into a corporation in an inclusive manner actually means changing the culture, which is one of the most difficult areas to transform. There was a recent study done by a group called Talent Lift that showed that 90% of the recruiters have rejected candidates due to their lack of cultural fit. Now, and by the way, anyone who's been a hiring manager knows that fit into the existing culture is often a key hiring criteria. So much hiring and recruiting is done to sustain a culture, and now we're often looking to adapt and change that culture. It does become a really difficult challenge. So the board can and must press to incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion into the, as I mentioned before, into the values, mission, and goals, and thus have it implemented through the strategy and actions of the corporation. Because that successful implementation also includes what opportunities there exist and the capabilities. So the opportunities that a DE&I presents must be visible throughout the corporation, and everybody has to adapt those goals. It has to become a part of the which is why it needs to become detail. On the good news side, there was a recent LinkedIn study that showed that 70% of the professionals in the US today wouldn't work for a leading company if it meant that they had to tolerate a bad workplace culture. So people themselves, employees, aren't tolerating that kind of a culture. So I believe that the more boards and the leadership press can create a truly inclusive culture, in addition to the specific goals of a corporation, will mean that they get the opportunity to hire and retain high quality, diverse employees, and in turn, the corporate results will be better. So it's a beneficial thing to do, as we discussed before.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point, that as a board is sort of driving this transformation, there needs to be clarity on purpose, clarity on intent, transparency, right? You want to bring people along in this. You want to tell the world about what it is that you're trying to shape, kind of bring community with you as you're building this this new model. So I love all of this perspective here, because these are really useful things, like things to really pay attention to if you're trying to make impact and you want to have a diverse strategy that lasts. So we're actually at the close of time, believe it or not, and so I'd love to make sure that we leave room for final thoughts from both of you. And if you could, if you have one thing that you think board leaders can do tomorrow, to drive diversity, equity, and inclusion. Karen, why don't we start with you?
Well, I would say that the boards need to take a look at the various best practices that exist. They need to collaborate and look at company values. But they also need to have difficult conversations among themselves and be open to taking action. So I would say recognition on the board is really critical, taking action and taking the time to get experts in who can help them board members understand what is needed. I mean, after all, with the Me Too movements, the Black Lives Matter movement, issues that have existed for decades, even centuries, are being brought to the forefront now. We need to keep this momentum going. This is the time, and corporations have the resources and the influence to provide powerful leadership in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and impact some of the systemic and sustainable change. Women can contribute significantly to this. To recognize this and take action. This change is going to take years, but there's no time like the present. So I'm saying, boards, pay attention, do your homework, bring experts in, and act now. That's my message.
Love it. Thank you, Karen. Arno.
Yeah, I love it too. I would say, you know, as any transformation, that requires courage. And probably also, I think that board members should also not only, you know, be, I would say, totally convinced that they need to do it, but they will probably have to take a bit of risk, you know, at least in the way they look at the world. You know, this is risk. I think that what all the studies have shown, etc., is that it's a no-brainer. If you look at, you know, what it's going to bring to your company in terms of better performance, better culture, better ability to attract people, etc. This is a no-brainer. But the thing is that most of the board members, most of the boards at the moment are still working with a very old operating system. So it means that it will take a bit of courage, so that individually they need to make improvements. They need to convince themselves that this is really the way forward. So I think that this is also what we should pay attention to. It's really helping people individually, I would say, deeply understand why this matters. And there are probably many ways to do that, probably many ways to help people reflect on why it's so important. It has been so important in their own lives, actually, to live diversity and to experiment diversity. And if it has been absolutely critical for them in their own lives, then it's also critical in their own company. So let's encourage them to do that. Let's allow them sometimes maybe to fail, but to learn from that. But also let's push them to basically enter this path, I would say, individually, and the motivations to do it will be different. But at the end of the day, I think that if everyone takes the time to reflect on that, they will probably come to the same conclusion that we need more diversity in the world.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. So thank you both for this really invigorating, inspiring conversation. I think if anyone listening to this can see that the momentum is with you to be courageous, to make the changes happen, to create new forms of leadership and opportunity. I'm certainly inspired, and I think I can say for the audience that you've shared so much perspective here that can help provide a path forward in making this a priority and impacting not only company success, market success, and certainly community success of the societies and people that we impact and certainly want to serve. So thank you all for your time and joining us today. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Arno. And with that, we'll go ahead and close our call. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.